Good afternoon. I'm Cindy Hall, President of the Women's Congressional Policy Institute, WCPI. Welcome to the third discussion in our economic briefing series, Women-Owned Small Businesses, Current Challenges and the Role of Women's Leadership in the Economy. As most of you know, WCPI is a nonpartisan nonprofit public policy organization whose mission is to bring women policy makers and trusted partners together to advance issues of importance to women, develop the next generation of women leaders, and foster a more effective and representative democracy. We work closely with the members and staff of the Bipartisan Congressional Caucus for Women's Issues. In our discussion today, we will be hearing from women entrepreneurs on the experiences and challenges of owning and operating a small business, as well as the importance of women's leadership and how organizations of all sizes can work to overcome barriers to encourage women to take leadership roles. Our special thanks to the Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM, and Comcast for their support for this briefing. We appreciate their commitment to improving the workplace for women and their efforts to invest in women entrepreneurs. I would like to thank our congressional briefing co-sponsors, the leadership of the Women's Caucus, Congresswomen Madeleine Dean and Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, co-chairs, and Congresswoman Lucy McBath and Kat Kamak, vice chairs. Our special thanks to our speakers, Emily Dickens, Peggy Lee Clark, and Waleska Rivera, each of whom will be introduced shortly. We will be live tweeting during the briefing, and we encourage you and others to do so as well using the hashtag WCPIEconSeries. I'm now very pleased to introduce Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, Democratic co-chair of the Bipartisan Congressional Women's Caucus. And Congresswoman Dean is serving her second term representing the 4th District of Pennsylvania. She serves on financial services and judiciary committees. And among her many priorities in Congress, she is a strong advocate for small businesses and has worked to help businesses hurt by the pandemic to recover and reopen. Congresswoman Dean recommended one of our speakers today, Peggy Lee Clark, one of her constituents.
Well, Cindy, good morning, or is it afternoon now? Good afternoon. Thank you, Cindy, for your kind introduction. I'm so delighted that my friend Peggy Lee Clark has joined us today, and I look forward to having you hear from her. She is a force of nature. I'm just warning you all. Thank you to the Women's Congressional Policy Institute for hosting today's briefing on women-led businesses and the challenges they uniquely face. Thank you, Emily Dickens. I think I just jumped on. I apologize. I think she may have spoken before me. I'm not sure. Peggy Lee Clark, who you will hear from, Waleska Rivera. It's great to be here with my co-chair. I think she may be on, or she will be on at some point, of the Bipartisan Women's Caucus, Representative Jennifer Gonzalez Colon. We have spent the last year and a half of this session talking about, brainstorming about things that affect women and their families, particularly small business owners, medium-sized business owners, and the rest. COVID has been such a strain on all of us. I don't need to explain that to anybody on this Zoom. And COVID has drastically and disproportionately affected women. Nearly 3 million women left the workforce during the pandemic in order to care for their families, their children, their parents, you name it. And whether it was due to caretaking or other tremendous hardships, the past few years have been deeply challenging for women small business owners. I'm here today to listen, but also to lift up the work that we have done in Congress, particularly aimed at women, families, children, and their parents. You think about it. We saw the spirit with which we brought our work during COVID in these past 2 years. The enhanced ACA benefit, the enhanced child tax credit, lifting 40% of children out of hunger and poverty, PPP, which went to businesses, small, medium, and somewhat large, and many other things, mental health issues, funds directly to schools and education or to our state and local government. to try to deal with many issues facing women, particularly women business owners. But as I say today, thank you for allowing me to say a welcome to everybody on the Zoom. I am here to listen and learn more, to get a deeper understanding of the unique challenges you all have faced and get ideas where Congress can help, and we must do more. So with that, I will yield back to you, Cindy, with my thanks.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Dean, for your remarks. And we look forward to working with the caucus leadership and members to ensure that women in small business continue to succeed and women's leadership is indeed elevated, as you both have worked so hard to do. I'm very pleased now to introduce Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez-Colon, Republican co-chair of the Women's Caucus. Congresswoman Gonzalez-Colon was elected to represent Puerto Rico in 2016 and serves on the Natural Resources and Transportation and Infrastructure committees. Her priorities include expanding economic development and opportunities for small businesses, both in Puerto Rico and nationally. Congresswoman Gonzalez-Colon recommended one of our other speakers today, Waleska Rivera, and she is one of her constituents. Congresswoman.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you to the Women's Congressional Policy Institute for organizing this event on current challenges and the role of women leadership in the economy. I want to say thank you to my dear friend and colleague, Marilyn Dean. I mean, we're working together in the Women's Caucus, and I'm grateful that she's here today with us as well. I will say that during my time in public service, I have prioritized the development of small businesses in Puerto Rico as an essential instrument for recovery and economic development of the island. And most recently, after the hurricanes, earthquakes, and now with the pandemic, it makes more important that we do support small businesses on the island. And this includes, of course, the work of Congresswoman Dean, whom I co-chair the Women's Caucus with. And according to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor for Puerto Rico's 2020 report, only 11.8% of women in Puerto Rico participate in entrepreneurial activity. And that means 5.6% less than their male counterparts. In overall, the number of female entrepreneurs also decreased by 2.9% from 2019 to 2020. And to promote expansion of women-owned businesses, I partnered with UPS. This is something that we were trying to do after the pandemic to try to improve the small business sector, specifically to women-driven businesses. So we partnered with UPS and the Puerto Rico Department of Economic Development to support the University of Women Exporters. And this is a UPS-led training opportunity to provide women entrepreneurs with the tools and resources needed to be globally competitive and increase the participation of women-owned businesses in international trade. They reach more than 500 women-owned businesses in their first year. So that means that's a small, good step towards the main goal. And I will continue to advocate for the expansion of the Small Businesses Administration Women Business Centers programs on the island of Puerto Rico. As a matter of fact, this year, SBA opened 2 new women development centers on the island in partnership with the University of Puerto Rico in Bayamón campus, and then Ana Jiménez University, in order to provide more opportunities and resources for future women entrepreneurs. I want to say thank you to all our speakers for sharing their experiences, and especially to my good friend and constituent, Waleska Rivera. She's been recognized on the island, not only for her leadership in the construction industry, but also her work in her community, including the Boys and Girls Club, Boy Scouts of Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico Manufacturers Association, the Puerto Rico Chamber of Commerce. And I can continue to name a lot of those organizations that she's been working. I mean, Waleska Rivera is a force that people on the island in the entrepreneurial business and in the industrial business also recognize as one of the top leading women-owned businesses on the island, and her leadership puts her apart. Waleska has worked her way up to the role of general manager of Danosa Caribbean Incorporated, which is the fastest growing roof waterproofing products and services company in the island. I want to say thank you again, Waleska, for all you do. And thanks again, Cindy, for having all these amazing women leaders speak up to us today.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Gonzalez Colon, and we appreciate your leadership, which you've certainly given some great examples in your support for business growth and development for women entrepreneurs. Thank you as always. It is now my pleasure to welcome our first panelist, Emily Dickens, who's Chief of Staff, Head of Government Affairs, and Corporate Secretary for the Society for Human Resource Management, or SHRM. As a member of the executive team, she has oversight for implementing the CEO's vision, corporate governance, global outreach, government affairs, and the organization's real property. Emily serves on the executive board of the North America Human Resource Management Association and is Secretary General of the World Federation of People Management Associations. She is an attorney with significant experience in government, higher education, and the nonprofit sector. Emily?
Thank you, Cindy. It's an honor to be here with you again and to talk about an issue that is critically important. I'm excited that I get to open and tell you some of the research we've heard about women in leadership. And this pipeline is so important because not only does the women leadership pipeline lead to the C-suite and those seats around that table, but many of those women leave organizations and start their own businesses. So their experiences within the organizations will follow them and they'll lead others. So we're so excited to join you today. And we're going to get started with some research that SHRM has been working on. So when women thrive in leadership roles, organizations benefit. Organizations with a higher proportion of women in leadership are more likely to report improved business outcomes, such as greater creativity and innovation, and increased productivity. Yet, despite making up nearly half of the US labor force, women are still significantly underrepresented in leadership positions, accounting for only 8% of Fortune 500 company CEOs and 30% of S&P 500 directors. To better understand the challenges holding women back from attaining parity at their company's leadership tables, SHRM surveyed HR professionals, individual contributors, and managers. To achieve positive change, business leaders must be willing to take a closer look at the gender gaps that exist in their organizations, from entry level to the C-suite, and to commit to creating spaces that allow all workers to reach their full potential. Creating inclusive cultures that identify potential leaders without concern for gender is critical to fostering diverse representation at the top. Our research shows that these are key culture areas to break down barriers for women entering leadership. Offer more support for women with leadership ambitions, make awareness of job openings more equitable, address disillusionment, make your C-suite welcoming and inclusive, both in representation and in communication. While many organizations have taken steps to eliminate these barriers, this research underscores that there is more work to be done to create equitable opportunities for men and women in the leadership pipeline. To better support all workers along their leadership journeys, employers should develop a meaningful DE&I strategy for their leadership pipeline that's aligned with the organization's mission, vision, and values. You all may know the term we use, culture. Nearly 2/3 of organizations say DE&I is a high strategic priority, but only 1/3 describe themselves as very successful in creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. An aligned DE&I strategy not only helps organizations garner buy-in from employees on the importance of gender equity within their leadership pipeline, but it also communicates to employees how DE&I is tied to larger company goals. Alignment can ensure that all efforts to improve gender DE&I are purposeful and cohesive, provide value to employees and the organization, create shared accountability, and support measurable and sustainable change. But you also have to track and examine the metrics related to your DE&I. This helps you identify gaps in your leadership pipeline and engage progress toward your goals. Organizations looking to enhance gender equity in their leadership pipeline can't manage what they don't measure. 50% of organizations with unsuccessful DE&I initiatives did not track their relevant metrics. And because these metrics may be used to make important decisions and to hold leaders accountable, it's imperative to ensure that the data organizations collect is high quality. Specifically, it's important that organizations regularly ask themselves questions like, what's our current system to track and house DE&I metrics? Is our data comprehensive? Is it accurate? Is it updated? What are we not measuring that we should be? Organizations also must not overlook other important metrics, such as pay equity and retention rates that serve as key measures of an equitable pipeline. Identify hidden biases that may exist along the leadership pipeline and that create inequitable or unequal access to important resources or advancement opportunities. To recruit, hire, develop, promote, and retain female leaders, organizations must challenge past assumptions and practices, prioritize removing barriers to equal opportunity, and ensure equitable access to key resources. Even seemingly small barriers can have a large impact on whether men and women are equally empowered to move up the pipeline. To ensure that both men and women are equally supported on their journey to the top, organizations should regularly audit their practices and policies, from recruitment and hiring to performance and development to promotion and succession planning, to ensure they're equitable. Let's not overlook the hidden biases in everyday interactions either. People managers have a critical role to play in creating safe and equitable workplaces. And for this reason, organizations should consider the value of equipping their people managers with training on topics like managing diverse teams and eliminating unconscious bias that can help managers reflect on key questions like, am I hiring or promoting the most qualified candidates? Or do I tend to gravitate those who are most like me? Am I creating equal opportunities for all my employees to demonstrate and develop their skills and capabilities? Do I make a consistent effort to recognize each of my employees publicly when they've done excellent work? We've also got to create more inclusive workplace cultures that foster a sense of belonging for all staff and at all levels. To better support current and future female leaders, organizations must invest in inclusion. Our research shows that while men and women at the individual contributor level often feel similarly included, a worrisome shift occurs at the leadership level. When women currently step into leadership roles, they tend to experience a lower sense of belonging and become less likely to stay. They become less likely than men to feel included in key networks, to feel they can talk about their personal life without being judged, and to feel that they're taken seriously as a leader. Organizations that actively build inclusive cultures experience several benefits in retention and talent. Workers in inclusive workplaces are nearly 2.5 times more likely to recommend their organization to others as a great place to work. Those numbers are 90% versus 37%. And to feel respected and valued at work, and are much more likely to look for another job, 35% versus 51%. Without inclusion, organizations risk simply paying lip service to the importance of gender equity within their leadership pipeline. Consider implementing returnship programs to build pathways for new talent and engage women who may have left the workforce during the pandemic. Returnship programs are workforce re-entry programs that draw on applicants who want to return to work, but who've been out of the workforce for various reasons. Caregiving responsibilities are one example. This could be an opportunity for both organizations and women alike. Rather than being forced to settle for jobs that are not commensurate with their expertise, returnship programs can help workers re-enter roles that are better aligned with their experience and knowledge. This can also help women re-enter leadership pathways and engage them in meaningful ways consistent with their career goals. If organizations are truly interested in creating diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces where everyone has a chance to thrive, business leaders must be willing to take a closer look at the gender gaps that exist in their leadership pipeline and commit to making positive change. By doing so, organizations will be better equipped to empower their workers to be the best they can be, and in turn, to inspire the leaders of the future. And I'll just add, for all of our women leaders out here who are entrepreneurs. And I'm so excited to hear the stories of my two panelists, of the other two panelists here. It is so crucial that we be mindful of our responsibility to make sure we're creating the most inclusive environment for our employees. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. You've already described probably 10 briefings worth of ideas, as always, and we know you'll share your slides with attendees too. We'll be able to post them. They're always popular. Thank you so much for SHRM's great research and for your wonderful presentation, as always. I'm very pleased to turn this back to Congresswoman Dean, who will introduce Peggy.
Terrific. And that was really, Emily, thank you for that terrific data and so clearly stated. So I look forward to you sharing the slide deck with us. It is my honor now to introduce my friend Peggy Lee Clark. She's Secretary of the Pottstown Area Economic Development. She's Executive Director of the Pottstown Area Industrial Development, also known as PAID Corporation, and a board member of our Tri-County Chamber of Commerce. But as I said, she's my friend. Before her time as a champion for businesses and for Pottstown and that Tri-County area in my district, Peggy Lee Clark began her career in the hospitality industry where she worked for 20 years. But I got to know her in a different industry, an industry she and I both prize, and that is the industry of education. Peggy served as the Executive Director of Government Relations and Special Projects and Assistant to the President at our Montgomery County College, where she also taught marketing and management. Clearly, Peggy Lee, I told you, is a force. I've had the chance to work with her for the past 10 years, whether at the college or now in the last 5-6 years, I guess, in economic development, particularly in the area of Pottstown, Montgomery County, and then that Tri-County area. She has been a connector, a relationship builder, somebody who's a visionary for the area, connecting entrepreneurs, community leaders, advocates, and opportunity. She has tireless dedication and innovation. She thinks outside the box. She marches to her own drummer. And when I say marches, she and I have done multiple tours in our business area. It's hard to keep up with her, to be very honest. Her mission is the revitalization of Pottstown into a hub for businesses. And she is achieving really remarkable goals, from manufacturing to technology to finance, a place where businesses want to grow. People want to work, raise their children, and buy homes, and be there with their families. As I say, I've been with her on the trail to many businesses. She's introduced me to so many. We've been able to troubleshoot problems for some. So she's just this powerful connector, a woman of passion, particularly for small businesses, particularly for women in business. I have long admired Peggy Lee's can-do spirit, her tenacity. And so with that, I'm pleased to welcome Peggy Lee Clark for her insights into this briefing. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman, and it is my honor to be here today, and I hope I live up to half of those really kind words. So as the Congresswoman introduced me, I am from Pottstown Area Economic Development, and I am pleased to talk about some of my favorite people here in town, which are the women who own businesses here. So just to give you a little background, I'm not sure why I'm not advancing, sorry. Pottstown, Pennsylvania is located on the Schuylkill River. We are 5.5 square miles. I often talk about my 5.5 mile box. We are in southeastern Pennsylvania, about 40 miles outside of the city of Philadelphia, and we have a population just over 23,000 people. We do have nearly 30 women-owned businesses in the 5.5 square miles of the borough of Pottstown, and they are a diverse bunch of individuals who have really been able to leverage and parlay their passions into viable businesses that are part of our economic engine here. There are approximately 15 organizations which are led by women here. Interestingly enough, most of them are nonprofit organizations as we started to gather the inventory for today's presentation. One of the things that I am most interested in from an aspect of small business ownership, which I do believe, just to give you a little background of Pottstown, Pottstown is the place where most of the Bethlehem Steel was created to build bridges. And so what is interesting to me is that people often had said, gee, what we need is another Bethlehem Steel back. Well, behemoths are not really the way of economic development for us. We see the way forward in small businesses. So small businesses are extremely important to our economic recovery. Cedarville Engineering is an engineering firm. It is woman-owned by a woman named April Barcassi. I am proud to say that she has been recognized as one of SBA's Woman of the Year, and she has recently acquired a firm in Florida, as well as what she has opened here and developed in Pottstown. Delia and Dean Fresh Market. This is a beautiful little shop that is owned and operated by a woman who not only lives here in Pottstown, but she also runs a very successful consulting business for the healthcare industry. Kristen Serbach is a ball of energy all the time. She is the head baker. Her bakery is award-winning. She's been recognized on several local media channels and continues to just expand her business into also not just what you think of a traditional bakery, but being able to create team building exercises through her bake shop. And then we have Once Upon a Time, which is a lovely consignment boutique, which initially was not in our downtown. Gina saw the opportunity, Gina Spies, to be part of our downtown revitalization. She moved her shop right into the middle of everything and has continued to be successful. But the things that I wanted to talk about most is why people have been successful and why they have not been successful here in town. Those few people that I have highlighted have been successful, largely in part because of the three buckets as I am going to discuss today. One is the environmental factors. They've had the education and experiences and the opportunity to be able to handle life pressures that come at them and stay open. A lot of the businesses that I have seen fail, especially those that are women-owned businesses here in town, are because people just do not have the opportunities that these women have been afforded or have sought out and gotten for themselves. But it's not through any fault of the people who have not succeeded. They just have not been able to weather the storms like the women who succeed do. Most recently, it has been because of life pressures. If they are not able to open and they are a single entrepreneur, what happens to their business? And if they're not open on a regular basis, people simply just walk away and will not continue to visit their businesses. Establishing goals. This is a huge one. I do talk to an awful lot of entrepreneurial people who really have a vision, but they really don't have a goal. They have a dream, but they need to be able to think about what they are going to do once the ribbon cutting is over. A lot of people see their idea, they're very excited, they're passionate. I often use the example of, I love my mother's apple pies, so everybody should love my mother's apple pie. And people tell me I should go into business, but then what happens after that? Are you going to be able to navigate those things that come up? Are you going to be able to expand? Maybe you don't want to expand. There are businesses that are sole proprietors that do very well, and they are able to navigate whatever the market is bringing their way. They like to be who they are, and they are very good at it. But there are those that do need to expand. There are those that can't possibly keep up themselves just running a business by themselves, 12-hour days, 7 days a week. So how are they going to be able to expand themselves and sustain themselves? And then those connections, and that's really what my organization is here for, is hopefully we hope that people will find us so that we are able to make those connections for individuals. It's not because anybody is smarter or better at it. It's just that I find most of the male business owners, they ferret out what the opportunities are. They really support each other. They have mentors that they talk to, whether it be in the downtown because they see each other at a restaurant on a regular basis, or they're part of a club that they like Rotary that support one another. So I think it's really important that those connections exist. And that's really what I believe to be those relationships that help you establish, sustain, and grow. And that's what PAID is here for. That's what we do. And that's what we want to continue to do, because we know how much it is important. I want to leave you with some ideas or some facts and figures of things that I found out when looking into some research for today's panel. And what struck me is that in 2019, women owned just 40% of the businesses compared to 60% of men. And I think what struck me about this for Pottstown is that we are even in less percentage as women leading businesses and the business community. So it is something that we need to work on and look at those interventions that can be taken to get that number to be closer to a 50%. Funding for female business owners. This is particularly important for a town and really a country that really needs innovation more now than ever. And innovation is how we move things forward. 98% of that venture capital funding goes to male founders. That really is discouraging to hear, because I think as a whole, women don't ask as much as they should. And I think that they're already afraid to ask. They don't know where to go. And they really need to be given some success in this arena. It's not all that complicated, but they just don't understand how it works either. So I think this is a really important slide for everybody to take note of, because it is so important to innovation. And then lastly, this is a big thing that I see consistently, is 12% of women-owned businesses receiving full financing compared to 14% of those male-owned businesses. Certainly, now that financial institutions are going to be less and less likely to fund as easily as they had in the past, and money is becoming more expensive to borrow, I worry that this is going to continue to just get tougher and tougher for women trying to get the right amount of financing. So I thank you today. These are just some opening thoughts. 6 minutes went really fast. I hope I didn't go over. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Peggy. We really appreciated your very astute observations. Like Emily, you've given us additional topics for briefings. These are so many important issues. The Women's Caucus has worked a lot over the years to try to expand access to capital for women-owned businesses and within the federal contracting as well. And so, but we appreciated hearing about the issues and what your important work is with the small businesses in your community as well. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. I know Congressman Gonzalez Colon certainly helped to introduce Valeska, but I'm going to go ahead and remind people, since it's been some time since she did that. But we're very pleased to welcome Waleska Rivera, President and CEO of Denosa Caribbean. She is a Puerto Rican entrepreneur committed to initiatives that strengthen economic and social development in Puerto Rico. And in her role leading Denosa Caribbean, she oversees the manufacture and distribution of roofing membranes, such as green roofs, cool roofs, and solar roof systems. And among her multiple business leadership positions, she was president of the Puerto Rico Manufacturers Association and the first woman on the board of the General Contractors Association, and has received top awards, including top 10 business leaders of Puerto Rico, and is the recipient of the Alejandro Herrero Award, the highest distinction given in the construction industry. So we are so pleased to welcome Waleska Rivera.
Well, good afternoon, Cindy. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Thank you to Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez that asked me to be here also. And we work together definitely in Puerto Rico for different aspects. And I think that you also have a great Congresswoman in Congress, in our representation. So thank you. I observe all the protocols. I've heard all these marvelous women and all these stories. And well, I'll share part of mine with all of you. At the same time, I have to say that I want to mention something about Puerto Rico, because I think it's important for you to understand part of our relationship with the state. So this way you can understand what are our challenges on the way also. So Puerto Rico is a possession of the United States under the territorial clause of the US Constitution. Like others, we have non-voting representation in Congress and no Senate representation. The 3.2 million US citizens in Puerto Rico do not vote in the US elections. Puerto Rico has control of insular taxation instead of combining federal and state taxation. We, however, pay full US tax on non-Puerto Rico income, Social Security, Medicare. We pay federal minimum wages. We abide to environmental regulations and other federal laws and excises. Under the Jones Act, we maintain the US transportation fleet. We create US jobs that are not on the mainland, but they are US jobs, different to all our competitors, like it is Singapore, Ireland, Mexico, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, but we are creating US jobs. Puerto Rico is the only quasi-state level jurisdiction to simultaneously go through a bankruptcy, a reconstruction process after the major natural disaster like Hurricane Maria, earthquakes, a pandemic like everybody else, and now inflation. After the devastation caused by hurricanes and earthquakes in Puerto Rico, there has been a lot of money from Congress that has been allocated. Not only a lot of money, $78 billion in federal funds that have been allocated for recovery efforts by Congress, and which I must recognize Congressman Jennifer Gonzalez, because she has been behind those funds to get help to Puerto Rico. And everybody in Puerto Rico recognizes her help on this. Of those 78 billion in federal funds for recovery, 65 billion have been obligated or committed by federal agencies for distribution. But only 23 billion have been dispersed to recipients, subrecipients, and agency. So there's a lot of money out there still that will be used for the reconstruction of our island. So definitely we have a long way to go, a lot of work to do. All this said, how does a small woman-owned company like Denosa stay in business? It does have challenges without any doubt, but I have no doubt that a lot of us here have come a long way and have an inspiring story behind them. Peggy just mentioned a few women that are already inspiration for myself. Some, like myself, have come from owning struggling small businesses to help support the family to becoming entrepreneurs and job creators that contribute to social and economic development. Successful women are no longer the exception. We are taking strides in all levels, and slowly but firmly, we are making a difference. The company I own, Danosa Caribbean, was established in 1978. It is the only manufacturer of roofing membranes in the Caribbean and Latin America, and the only woman-owned in the American continent, which I have to say I'm very proud of that. As the company confronted challenges, the original owners decided to sell the business in the midst of a fire that destroyed part of the manufacturing facility in 1994. At that moment, I had about 1 week after I had given birth to my third child. So you can have an idea of our journey. I would like to share a very short video with you to see how it all started. This was the beginning of a great opportunity for a middle-class girl, daughter of an Air Force military retiree from Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, a small town in the west of the island. That's how we began. We followed through after months of family deliberations, pursued a manager's buyout, and believe me, we had to put a lien on our house, my husband's dental office, and even my 3 children, 2 of who are working with us already in the company, and that makes me also very proud. We grew a company after 3 decades of sacrifice and hard work to become the undisputed leaders of roofing membranes for waterproofing with 65% of the market share on the island. I say this humbly, but at the same time, we've worked very hard for this with the help of so many collaborators, because you never do this alone. We have earned the trust of our clients by manufacturing quality products that deliver peace of mind to home and building owners of all property types. We are exporting to the Caribbean, Latin America, and we private label to the United States. We are an important player, without any doubt, in the reconstruction of Puerto Rico. But we also have to think about what happens after the reconstruction, and we are already heading to increase those exports. Our company and our people tested its resiliency under extreme conditions when we opened 4 days after Hurricane Maria, a Category 5 hurricane that swept over Puerto Rico, and our island is only 100 by 35. Very small island, and we were totally devastated. This Puerto Rican entrepreneur that you're seeing here, like many others on the island, are ready to continue making a difference in our community. The federal funds for recovery and reconstruction are fundamental to reconstruct our island, but the Stafford Act must be enforced to truly improve our economy. Stafford Act should be used for jurisdictions that have been affected so that local products and local workmanship are utilized. Federal funds will be essential to economic growth and right now we estimate that the economic increase in fiscal years 2020 and 2023 would be a lot up from what it was previously due to these federal funds investment. We must support exports, increase manufacturing, which represents 48% of our GDP. Different from what a lot of people think that it is tourism. Tourism represents only a 7%, and agriculture only represents 1%. We must create a strong local supply chain, use federal funds to create a resilient infrastructure. We need a lot of help and a lot of investment in electricity, in roads, in water, in telecommunication systems. And those funds will make that difference. The debt restructuring process is over. The Biden administration has been willing to disperse the money appropriated by Congress. The worst of the pandemic, I think, is over. And all these trends converge in 2022 to create what many of us believe is the opportunity of a generation for Puerto Rico to turn around its economy and begin a sustainable social and economic development for the future. Our biggest challenge today, in my opinion, is creating a real economic development strategy that will permit Puerto Rico to take advantage of this great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Waleska. It was so amazing to hear about your remarkable experiences as a woman and leader in the construction industry, and very helpful to have the context in terms of Puerto Rico's situation and development. And we really wish you the very best. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over now to Cynthia Ramos, WCPI's Policy Director, who will moderate a brief discussion with our speakers before we close. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Each of our speakers has raised so many important issues, and due to time constraints, we've asked attendees to submit their questions in advance, and so we will not be taking live questions. So we'll jump right in. And my first question is for Emily. Since you've shared some statistics and talked about the barriers women face with being promoted to leadership positions, are there one or two success stories you can share about organizations that implemented some good policies and what resulted?
Sure. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about culture, how that's so important that you have a culture within your organization that is continually thinking about how to be more inclusive. And one of the things we realized early on, we've been at SHRM now almost 5 years, is people and their paid and unpaid leave, how people were just really holding on to leave because they just wanted to anticipate the next family crisis. So they were kind of saving it. And so my CEO said, he said, look, think about someone once in a lifetime 50th anniversary for their family. Everybody gets to go. It's 10-day cruise, but you can't go because you don't have 10 days of leave. And he said, let's look at open leave. How crazy would it be for us to provide open leave to our staff? We got a little pushback from our outside counsel, but he said he wanted to do it. And so now, 4 years later, we've successfully implemented open leave here. And here's the issue. It's about your people managers. I've said that before. But a resource like open leave means that when something unexpected happens, whether you're a man, woman, married, single, parent, or a caregiver for a parent, you now have the flexibility to do what you need to take care of your family without feeling like you're going to be dinged for it as you're trying to move up the ladder, because this is something that is open not just to women, not just to men, to everyone. So for my small business owners also, and then, you know, people always say, oh, you accrue all this time on your books and things like that. That's a lower hanging fruit. For me, the big picture is coming in the door to recruit talent and attract people, to be able to say, you've got leave whenever you need it, as long as you've talked to your manager and figured this thing out, I think is really good. The other thing that I've talked to you all about this before is something we call untapped talent. SHRM has been saying for years that we don't have a labor shortage. We have a shortage of people who want to look at labor differently. And so we say people who are formerly incarcerated, people who are older workers, people who've been out of the workplace, or people who have disabilities. So I'll give a story of a member of my team. She'd been out of the workplace over a decade raising her twins, right? And had been a lobbyist on the Hill, a tax expert. And we met her because she was doing a series about people who were older workers who were having a hard time returning to the workplace. My boss left her resume in my office. I happened to see it. I called her immediately. She is a successful member of our team. She's doing great. Yes, did it take some time for her to readjust to the workplace? But that's when you've got an environment that's inclusive and you all are working together to make sure that that individual is feeling included. But the fact that we've returned someone to the workplace at a level, she came in at a level equal to her skill set that she kept up, because she'll tell you while she was out of the workplace, she was still doing professional development, maintaining her her law license, and all of those things too. So things like going after untapped talent, that's a great policy, and open leave. Those would be two things I'd say. And then I know later on you want to talk about any of this kind of Well, I'll let you ask the question because I was going to kind of go into the next question, but I'll let you ask the question.
Sure, I'll try to get to as many questions as we can.
Yeah.
Next question is for Peggy. So in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, is there a general trend that you see in the types of businesses owned by women versus men? If so, why do you think women gravitate toward those businesses?
Yes, Cynthia, I do see it. I see mostly service industries. I talked about April Barcassi. She's a little bit of an outlier, right? Being in engineering, she's an environmental engineer by trade. I see people who go into fitness, service industries, retail, those types of businesses. And I really think it's from their experience, right? That is what they've either worked in previously or they feel confident in that area. And I think that says something about our educational systems, right? They are very traditional roles for women that they tend to gravitate towards. I also think that women as a whole, get pigeonholed into I'm the caretaker, right? And I want to make people feel good. So baking makes people feel good, or cooking for people makes people feel good, or fitness and health. So I think that's really the area. And then I do see, as I mentioned in some of my presentation, that nonprofits are led mostly by women. I have a theory that the nonprofits, it's because nonprofits struggle to competitively have a competitive salary. Men just wouldn't do the hard work for the amount of money that they get paid. So nonprofits as a whole get led by women as well.
Thank you so much for that. Next for Waleska. We obviously know that Denosa Caribbean is a great success story. But can you talk a little bit more about some challenges that you face specifically because you're a woman running a construction company?
Well, thank you. And by the way, Emily, I took all those notes about the open leaf and the talents, because that is one of our challenges in getting people. So I'm taking that as a note. Thank you. Well, challenges, I think, not because I'm a woman in construction. I think I've had challenges just like any entrepreneur that goes out there to work. But as a woman, I may say that my biggest challenge was in my earlier stages, was making a balance between my family life and my work. Trying to build a career as an entrepreneur, not just a regular hour. I didn't have any hours. I didn't have any days when I began. And like I said previously, my third child was only 2 weeks old or 1 week old when the fire. And during that year, I bought the company. So he wasn't even a year old when I bought the company. So therefore, I did have to balance a lot between my children, my family. They all learned how to probably love Danosa at the same time, because I would take them to work whenever I had to take them to work. And I think that has been my biggest challenge in all. I can tell you about the regular challenges of getting money, but those are the same challenges I would say would go to any male.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Emily, going back to you. So are there specific DE&I challenges that should be the focus for companies, including small businesses? What training or policies have made the most difference in changing workplace culture and attracting more diverse applicants, especially women of color?
Ooh, okay, so that's a big one. So I'm just going to say the advice I give, because most businesses in this country are small and mid-sized businesses. So we always hear about what the large companies are doing. That's in the paper every day, but they don't have the resources, our small and mid-sized companies, to do all of these big things people talk about. So I would say identifying what works most for your culture and the people who you have on payroll. There's been so much discussion about Dobbs, for example, right? And offering travel stipends and all those other things, and offering insurance policies that have a full complement of reproductive support, including IVF, which is very expensive too, right? I would say you got to know what you can and can't do and communicate that, because it impacts not just women in your organization, everyone. So look for those things that impact larger swaths of people, because if you're finding solutions to those issues, it's working for everyone. But the more you focus on issues that only impact one part of your workforce, the more you lose the others, right? The more that you got people who think that you don't care about them. I'm sure there are men somewhere that think that people don't care about their issues in the workplace. But as you all know, I've said this before, my CEO is a single dad. So, and has been one for 12 years. So he wasn't a CEO when he first became a single dad. And so there are some issues he has in common with the woman who is the single parent. So if you think about issues for single parents as a whole, and not just female single parents, then you're going to be able to address the needs of a larger group of your workforce. And then I would also say this focus on remote work, and all of us trying to be equitable in how we treat our remote workers and our people who come to the office. We actually had an issue with where someone wanted, we do lunches for people who are coming in the office. The cost of lunch is really expensive now. So if you're coming in the office twice a month, we'll do a lunch. And we had a remote worker say, well, what are you guys going to do for us, right? It's being transparent about what comes with being a remote worker, the pros and the cons, because for women of color, we're hearing that a lot of them think it's easy, that it's a better environment for them to be able to work remote. Is it? Right? Is it going to really help you when there are people in the office and you're asking a people manager that's already stretched thin to make sure that they're watching your career plus the career of the person who's in their face every day? And so I think that's a challenge as well. As much as people want to do well and do good, being able to treat employees the same, whether they're in your face every day or whether they're remote, is going to be an issue. And so you've got to kind of level set expectations.
Great, thank you so much. Going back to Peggy now, could you share some stories you've heard from women business owners on their awareness of current federal programs? And if so, have they found them helpful and how could they be improved?
So I would say that the awareness piece is the biggest piece. And people, I mean, I talk to a lot of my colleagues and people at the county level. And if there isn't an organization like mine that it is at the local level, a lot of them have no idea about government programs. I have a friend that always says to me, stop talking to me using all of the alphabet, right? Because they're all acronyms, they all have different initials to them. And agencies, right? We talk about EPA and DEP and RDA, and, you know, people glaze over. So I think the big thing for us that we learned during the pandemic was just getting people educated about programs that were out there that could help them. That's first and foremost. And so I think that both federal and state governments could do a much better job of an awareness. I think I constantly say we have to stop speaking government speak. I feel like sometimes I need to be bilingual and I am not. I am jealous of my friends on the call that like Waleska, who is bilingual, obviously, probably more than bilingual. I always say I'm embarrassed of the fact that I don't have another language, but I am bilingual in government speak and private sector speak. And the private sector does not speak the same way that the government speaks. So I think that's really an important piece of it. So we spent a lot of time working on getting people how to understand SBA loans, what was a grant, what was a loan, what would have to be paid back, what wasn't paid back. Obviously, everybody wanted money that didn't have to be paid back because they were in a panic of how they were even going to pay their bills. So I do think that PPP was a very successful program. EIDL had its bumps. Frankly, I found that it wasn't so much the government program, it was the program that was connected to the right organizations here on the ground that were able to help. So I think the connections, that's how they can be improved upon, is not only make it simple to understand, but also the connections, the people you're partnering with on the ground, make sure they are able to execute what you need them to execute.
Great.
I tried to make it quick, but we could spend a whole another session on that.
We definitely could. And I'm sure many of our attendees found that answer very helpful. Well, Leska, so infrastructure is a huge policy issue in Congress. From your experience, what do you think could be some effective ways to encourage more women to enter the construction industry?
That's an excellent question. For right now, it's very determinate well, first of all, in Puerto Rico, we're seeing more women going into construction. But at the same time, there's less women going into the workforce in general after the pandemic. A lot of them have decided to stay home, some are working remote, whatever. There's less women going back to the workforce. But I think if a lot of these women that are either not working again or never went out to work, if we can start giving them, in our case, the welfare benefits, there's an income limit established, but the income limit in Puerto Rico is very low. So it's more attractive for a person just to stay home and get that welfare than just going out to work, because at the end, the math is not correct. It will cost them basically to go out and work. So if those income limits are increased in Puerto Rico, I am sure that we will have more women going out and more women going into construction, because there is a lot of work in construction at this point.
Well, thank you so much. Last question for everyone. In 1 minute or less, what are 1 or 2 primary takeaways you hope the policymakers attending will consider in their work? And we'll start with Emily.
All right, I'm ready. I need them to differentiate between small and mid-sized business needs as opposed to those of large businesses, and no mandates, solve for more. So anything that they want to do policy on, think about how more people are impacted as opposed to smaller groups.
We can go with Peggy or Leska, whoever's ready.
Ready. Support educational programs for young women to introduce them to industries that normally have been traditionally held by men. And then do a better job of communicating those programs, look to simplify and streamline and partner with the right partners.
Well, we need 30,000 construction workers in Puerto Rico, and we can't make them from one day to the other. So we have to bring in workers from abroad. To get that, we can't go through the H-2B program because we will never make it. We need to have some program established similar to that happened in Guam, where because the funds were emergency funds, there were a lot of things that were not used or not required so that we can get those employees working in the workforce in Puerto Rico, because we need to use those $78 billion funds. And the other, I would say, is the Stafford Act, which I mentioned previously. Stafford Act is too important and must be enforced in all the agencies so that those federal funds will not only reconstruct the island, but reconstruct the economy.
Well, thank you all so much for those insightful and very thoughtful answers. And I'm going to turn it back over to Cindy for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, and thank you to our speakers. You've given such valuable presentations. The discussion was so rich and so filled with ideas and food for thought. And we cannot thank you enough for really introducing a big audience to challenges faced by women in leadership and women small business owners. And we are very grateful for that. Women-owned small businesses and the many women in leadership positions at companies of all sizes play such a major role in our economy. There clearly is so much more work ahead as we move forward during these difficult economic times, but plenty of hopeful things too, as each of the speakers mentioned. We hope that our speakers' insights and personal experiences shared today will contribute to successful bipartisan solutions to many of these challenges. Our conversation was recorded and should be available for viewing on our website at wcpinst.org sometime tomorrow. When the briefing ends, each attendee will see a survey on your browser about today's discussion, and we hope that each of you will take a few minutes to respond. Our thanks again to the Bipartisan Women's Caucus leadership, both members and staff, the Society for Human Resource Management, and Comcast for their support for this briefing. And finally, my thanks to our moderator and person that put this briefing together, primarily Cynthia Ramos, but also our team members, Cheryl Williams, Kritika Sharma, Annabelle Green, and Ansley Langham for their work to make this briefing possible. Thank you so much for joining us.